Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Building Power. I am your host, Zakiya Sankara Jabbar, and I'm excited to be here with you all again today. Today, I am joined by my amazing colleague, Tanesha Peeples, who is the Deputy Director here at brightbeam for activism and organizing. Welcome, Tanesha. Tell the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Hey y'all, what's going on? My name is Tanesha Peeples. I'm the Deputy Director of Activist Development here at Brightbeam, and just honored to work with Zakiya and be on the show today to talk about, some important stuff. But about me, lifelong Chicagoan, Southside proud, Black woman, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Shout out to my sorors. Yeah, DJ. Just out here kicking it, working for Black people, fighting for Black people. So glad to be here. Thanks, Zakiya.
Yeah, man. And just to give the audience a little bit of background about why we're excited to be together with you all today to have a conversation. Both Tanesha and I, like I said, we work together and we have a lot of opportunities like to talk. We have a lot of opportunities to bounce ideas off of each other. And we were both activated like last week, just thinking about our sister Shayna Bell in Ohio, the Ohio mom that many of you have probably heard about by now, who was arrested. Right, she was criminalized for her social status, for her economic status in our society. Arrested for working, but her children at the time did not have an adult supervision while she was working. So her 10-year-old was with the 2-year-old, and they were living in a motel. So like there's so many different things. And Shayna herself was working at like a pizza joint, like a Pizza Hut or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like so many different things came up like for me and Tanesha, and I was like, you know what, Tanesha, this is what I've been writing about. I have been writing about centering parents and families at the margins since last summer when LA, the Los Angeles school district, first announced that they were going to be all virtual. And I remember saying to myself then, have they really engaged all of their families? Have they engaged all of the parents? Like, is there not another like creative solution that we can come up with that can make sure that we're meeting the needs of everybody? So yeah, Tanesha, like, I know you have been activated. I know you're trying to figure out like ways to write about it and all of this. Like, what made you what happened for you? What came up for you when you saw that story?
So you know what? The interesting thing was is that I was scrolling through my Facebook page, either Facebook or Twitter. I can't remember which one, but I came across the story, the article, and I was just like, damn, that's crazy. I don't even think that I read it fully, but the headline was like captivating, and so when I looked at it some more, I realized that it had actually been out for a few days because they had started the GoFundMe and all that good stuff. But it was like, it was outrageous, because when you think about it, like we in a whole ass pandemic. And it's like, this is just one example of a parent that had to choose between going to work to feed her kids or losing her job and her kids go hungry. And so I'm like, how many more Shaynas are out there in the world? And how many, are in this, again, in this same position, the same predicament, and we don't know their stories. And the messed up part about it is the injustice system made an example of this parent as a warning to say, y'all can't do this, but then what the hell else a parent supposed to do? So it was outrageous. And we find ourselves in this position all the time, having to make tough choices and be penalized or criminalized by the government. Like this shit is old.
Right, right. And here it is, like this Twitter post right here, like it was clear, this mom, damned if she do, damned if she don't. And that's it. Like that's why this is this title, The Invisible Families, right? And I think about like all the Black girl magic stuff, like me, you too, we on that too, Tanesha. And I even think about like the class dynamics, even in that conversation. Like when we say Black girl magic and Black girl power and Black women power, we're not really thinking about the Shayna Bills, even in that conversation, right? Like the working class mom, the mom who is, you know, in abject poverty, living in a motel, right? So like I even felt convicted, you know, in my own spirit, like what can I be doing more to make sure, you know, in this work that we're doing, because we're doing very important work, like this is this
Right.
work that we're doing, how are we even holding our own selves accountable to like make sure, right, that we're centering mothers like Shayna Bell. And I'm grateful. Let me just be really clear. I'm so grateful somebody thought like, hey, let's set up a GoFundMe, you know, let's support this sister. The problem is, and I don't want us as a society to think that we can GoFundMe our way out of a social safety net,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The last time I checked, and when I look at my paycheck, we still paying plenty of taxes. You
Yep.
feel me?
Yep.
So it's our collective responsibility to make sure that we're putting pressure, you know, on the people in power to say, hey, you know, where's our social safety net? Like,
Yep.
where's the support in a global pandemic?
But you know, Zakiya, they call that safety net and them dirty ass stimulus checks. You know, as
Girl,
if
don't get me started.
I mean, you know, and I posted a status about this a couple of weeks ago because I got my little piece of stimmy, you know, and at first I was like, oh, okay, you know, my thing is buying shoes. I'm like, I'm about to buy some shoes. I'm about to do something. But then I thought about the fact that with my little piece of stimmy, I'm talking
Mhm.
about going to buy shoes and people are struggling. You
Yeah,
know, that was one piece of it. Then the second piece of it was like this little $600, however much y'all, this ain't doing nothing.
right.
Like, you know, and so I wasn't even mad. Like, we're seeing a lot of posts on social media with people like trying to just criticize people for what they were doing with their stimulus checks. But it's like if $600 ain't putting a dent in your bills, then it's like, why not go
Talk
treat
about
yourself?
it.
Like, we out here suffering. You know,
Talk
so go
about
do
it.
what you want with that money that belongs to us.
Right.
This ain't no government money. We pay into this
We
system every
paying
damn day.
taxes straight
Right.
up. We
And
pay
y'all
all
go put
ton
it,
of
yeah.
taxes. Yeah.
And y'all go put a cap on how much y'all go give us $600 and you know so much more for however many kids you got. Like this is our money, give it to us. It's our money and we want it now. You know, and so when you think about stuff like you said, I'm blessed too. Like I'm grateful to be gainfully employed and able to pay my bills and eat and stuff. But I'm also thinking about the position of privilege that I'm in at this moment
Exactly.
and how many more people are suffering and what I can do to, you know, help alleviate that suffering. But at the same time, it's not our jobs either. Like
Exactly.
this is the
As
rich.
individual people, it's injustice, right? Like, and the other thing that obviously, you know, that connected to me is because, you know, I haven't always been in this so-called privileged position and being gainfully employed and having, you know, all of my basic needs met. I have been there. And, you know, as you know, I lived in Ohio for 20 years. So I know how rugged Ohio can be and backwards
Mhm.
Ohio can be when it comes to supporting families. One of the things that I was thinking about earlier is like, you know, the only public housing program that this government is like consistently willing to spend billions of dollars on is prison.
Who?
You
Tell
feel
me.
me? I had to
Tell
think
me.
about that.
Who?
Like we're willing to spend top dollar to criminalize people when it's actually cheaper to like help people with a leg up. Nobody is asking for a handout because I also want to push back on that. Like for anybody that's listening to this, that's thinking this is all about gimme, 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 and this is a handout, man, miss me with that. Straight up.
Right.
Black people
Right.
are not looking for a handout, particularly descendants of Africans who have been enslaved in this country that even built the economic engine that all of y'all are enjoying right now,
Hmm.
right? The reason why the United States is the richest and wealthiest country in the world is because they have 400 years of free labor. Okay.
Let's tell them about it. Tell them
I
about
mean,
it.
so let's just be really honest about that. And so it hurt me even more that she's a young Black woman. She's only 25 years old. Like, we should be like, she should have access to free college, right? There
Yes.
was only one presidential candidate in the whole like race last year who was even talking about, who even used the word poverty. If you think about it, poverty, that word rarely exists in our public lexicon when it comes to electoral politics. Like we have gotten so far away from the fact that really, if you look at the economic numbers, especially in this pandemic, more people have sank into poverty, right? And so I think that it's incumbent, on us to make sure that we are imagining how we can build the kind of social safety net that we need to truly prosper. Like I said, a leg up, not a handout.
Zakiya, when I was trying to write a piece last week about Shayna's situation, I started off thinking about the words on the Statue of Liberty, right? That said,
Mm,
what did it say? Give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And I'm like, that's a Statue of Liberty goddamn lie. We ain't never meant that. You know what? I'm like, that's a Statue of Liberty lie. And she's the latest victim of that lie because we ain't never
yes,
meant, we
she
mean it
is.
now. We didn't, what was it, 1903, I think, when that was put on the Statue of Liberty. We ain't
Right,
mean it now. We ain't mean it then and we don't mean it now. So
right.
when we talk about poverty, that's like one of our credos in this country. Give us your poor and your tired, but y'all ain't did shit but step on them this whole time.
And criminalize them. That's what
Yes.
we do. Like
Yes.
it should be beyond reprehensible that the response to a Black woman working is to arrest her.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yes.
where's the support?
Yes.
Like, but now, like, we have seen a couple of celebrities, everyday people. And so my thing is with the GoFundMe is like, okay, but what about the other Shayna Bales out there who are
Exactly.
invisible? We know you're out there. Like, what it's other mothers that have been, arrested during this time. And another thing I saw earlier just today, and I was really concerned about is, one of our activists, Kulia, who is in the Twin Cities. She's like, I'm getting notices from the parents that I'm working with that truancy letters are being sent to them. I'm
Yep.
trying to understand, is this like more of a like systemic problem, or is this just two or three parents? The comment section was on fleek. No, seriously, that's the other thing that I warned about. I
Yep.
said, what's going to happen is in this virtual environment, they're going to turn around and criminalize working class parents who can't be at home to make sure their kids are getting on virtual learning because there's no oversight. I knew
Mm-hmm.
that there was going to be parents who would have to leave their kids home. And that's why I was trying to force schools to be more creative about the children that they serve, especially a
Right.
school district like LA, especially a school district like Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, these big school districts in urban areas that have a lot of families who are already at the margins. I
Mm-hmm.
warned about this.
But to Zakiya too, like what's really frustrating is the lack of examination of how the circumstances that brought parents to these unfortunate events. So you're not talking about the affordable housing. You're not
Right,
talking about livable wages. You're not talking
right,
about just ridiculously priced daycare and the fact that schools are open. You're
ooh,
telling a parent that all of these things are their fault. And then when you're talking about truancy, you're not talking about the families that don't have internet access, the families that don't have laptops, Chromebooks,
right.
whatever. You're not talking about all these circumstances. You want to criminalize and blame the parents as
Yep,
if like shit, we set y'all up the best we could, and now you got to make the best of it. No. So you're not talking about all of these inequities and these injustices that put these parents in these situations to where they had to again make a decision about feeding their families or letting their families starve or go homeless, or trying to use their checks to say, okay, I need to put my child, I got to make a decision about feeding all of my kids or putting one of my kids in daycare because of truancy. Y'all not talking about that. And that's the crazy shit to me. Like,
right,
come on now. Come on.
right.
That's easy. That's easy. Like if we can figure it out at the we none of us are like elected officials, politicians, policy wants any of those things, but it's like that's obvious. Those are
Right.
obvious injustices that y'all don't want to talk about, but y'all want to blame the parents. That's not cool. That's not cool.
That's actually for people who don't know me. I actually got my start in this work as a parent organizer and a parent activist. I was activated very early on when my son at the time was in preschool, and one of the things that I noticed during that time when I was first activated and doing this work and doing this organizing, I was like, wow. there's literally no room for Black parent voice. And at that time, I was very poor. In fact, at that time, I was on public assistance, everything. And I remember how it felt to be treated like less than, how I felt to be treated, how to be othered. I was already othered for being Black in America, but then add being a woman and add being on social being on a social safety net or some kind of like poverty program. Oh, I had the whole welfare queen vibe, like literally following me everywhere. But I actually pushed through. I was like, I'm gonna like push through all these stereotypes that you all have about me right now. And you're going to actually listen to me as a human being. And you're going to listen to me as a human being. And my child is a human being. You're going to, get rid of all these ideas that you have about me in your head. And I can't. And I think that's one of the things that I connected with, why I connected so much with Shayna Bell's story, right? I connected so much with her plight. Can you imagine being in a moment right now where you sitting down with your 10-year-old? I can imagine her having a talk with her 10-year-old. I need you to make sure you watch your little 2-year-old brother or sister, right? Yep. Mommy has to go to work. I'm sorry, I have to leave you. No parent should have to do that. We should have, safety net programs where if this parent is working, for heaven's sake, she's trying. Right.
But this has been going on. I mean, Zakiya, you probably relate to this too. Like when I was coming up, my mother had to go to work. It's like, you got to get yourself ready. Yeah. And I had an older sister, 11 years older. Thankfully she's, much older than me, and she helped take care of me. But a lot of Black and brown families go through this, and so, it's like, this has been a long-standing issue that's not being addressed. Yep. And I just, I'm not a parent, but I call myself, all the kids in the community and around the country belong to me.
Your babies, right? Everybody auntie.
Yeah, I'm everybody auntie. Auntie Tanesha, whatever you want to call me. But cousin Tanesha on Mondays, I'm cousin Tanesha because I cut up on Mondays for real. But but just thinking about like, I didn't have that personal connection, but as a Black woman and just as a Black person that knows that struggle, I was just like, damn, and it's heartbreaking. And it's one of the questions was, two questions came to mind. Why does this keep happening to us? And how can we change this? And I'm at this point in my life with everything happening to Black people, I'm forward thinking, because at the end of the day, they've been doing this to us for so long, and it's not going to change. It might a little bit. Some things have been let up, but otherwise, we still living in systemic racism and all that, oppression. And so at this point, it's like, what can we do for ourselves? And
that's the conversation. And I thank you, Tanesha, for bringing that up, because here's the thing. It has to be like a parallel, both and kind of conversations. Yep. Absolutely. As long as we're paying taxes, because Black folks been paying taxes since, we've been had an opportunity to work in this country, right? And all the taxes we pay every time we go to a store and go shopping and all that, we pay a list of taxes. Let's just be completely transparent about that. So yes, we have an obligation, right, to hold our government accountable to the needs of our communities. Right.
I'm in Illinois, so we know about taxes. Right. We know about heralds and we know about taxes.
Exactly. And then we also know, right, that this government has let us down consistently. Yep. Consistently over years. You understand me? So we also know that we have to create our own benevolent societies. I brought this up when the pandemic first hit, and shout out to Maurice, one of our activists in DC, who's really been holding it down on that mutual aid perspective. Yes, our brother in the streets, like rain, sleet, or snow, looking at the encampments. There are encampments, everybody who is listening, of Black people in Washington, DC, who are unhoused, who are homeless. And he's out there every single day, making sure they're fed, making sure that they have things to keep them warm, sadly, right? Because there's an overflow now, even from the homeless shelter, there's an overflow of people who don't even meet the rigorous criteria it needs to even be in a homeless shelter. We got a lot of layered issues. So I have been a huge proponent of this idea that we got to go back to the source. We got to sankofa. Our
Yes.
people, after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865, when the government again did not come through on the 40 acres and the mules, what did we do?
Hmm.
Black people came together and built benevolent societies. There's research about that. I'm so proud of us. Right here in Washington, D.C., there's a building called the True Reformer Building that was built by Black people. And it was built by Black people for the benevolence of helping and providing aid to Black people before the government even thought about it. Number two,
Hmm.
if we think about WIC, they stole that from the Black Panthers. We've always done that.
Yes.
Always done that. And I feel like now is the time, particularly in this pandemic, and particularly, while schools have closed. I've seen a lot of us organize to support, but clearly we have to ramp up the support that we need to be provided in our communities, like providing a safe space for parents to like fill out a Google Doc or something, like, okay, I need help because I
Right.
have to go to work at this pizza shop and I don't have nobody to watch my 10-year-old or my 2-year-old. Why didn't Shayna Bell have that as an option? That's the
And let
question.
me, as a kid, let me tell you how easy it is. Let me tell you how easy it is because I did that. I did that. And this ain't on no bragging stuff, but it's just what needs to be done. Like when we had the George Floyd rioting and looting in Chicago, and a lot of Black businesses were destroyed, and we were also seeing a lot of Black families suffering. I'm like,
Yeah,
we gotta bring some relief to our community. So I boom, started a GoFundMe.
you did. Yeah,
Start a GoFundMe, and Auntie Tanesha easily raised $15,000.
you sure
And gave
did.
that $15,000 to Black business owners and Black families,
You
and
sure
that's what
did.
we got to do, y'all. That's what we got to do.
You
And
did that immediately. I appreciate
yeah,
you for that.
if we all did that, just imagine. Like even I put a status up the other day. Like Shayna Bell got over $150,000 in GoFundMe. Like if we applied that effort and that urgency every day, imagine how that could transform our communities. Because ain't nobody else filtering money into our people or into our community. So we got to do it ourselves, and that's the how. The how is
Yeah,
in we. And so it's
right.
nothing. It's like all this technology, boom, GoFundMe. People donate. You get the bag and you distribute the bag. It's that easy. It ain't no whole process. You ain't got to start no LLCs, no C3s, none of that stuff. Like don't let Twitter LLC have you fooled. Like it's just that easy. And so I'm, like my brother Jason has an action item all the time on our shows.
Right.
If you need an action item to leave this show with today, go out and help the people that are
I
struggling.
love that.
Mutual aid.
I
Boom.
love that. An
It's enough.
action item. An
Yeah.
action item. Like start connecting with the infrastructure that already exists in your community. And if you find gaps, find ways to fill those gaps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Find ways to fill those gaps. And I think, we have seen some churches and things and stuff that are stepping up, but even in our community, the churches could step up a little bit more.
Don't
Because
get
we
me
know now,
started.
you already know we got a church on every corner. Now, gonna keep
Woo!
it real.
Zakiya.
You already know.
And it's ridiculous. Open and closed. With all the churches we got, it should be giveaways every day.
Every day.
Every day.
We shouldn't have no unhoused people.
Nope.
What happened to be, I haven't been to church in years, but what happened to being the hands and feet of Jesus? I remember that.
I don't remember that, Zakiya. I'm a bit of a heathen, so I don't know the word. Like a
I
lot of
remember
people know
that
the
part,
word.
being the hands and feet of Jesus. I do. I remember that part about church, and we not get being hard on our churches. And that's the other thing too. A lot of churches are now struggling financially because they haven't been able to have in-person services and collect their, charity and things like that. But definitely churches are, and thank you, Jason. I know that churches are starting to step up, and so we do appreciate that. It's just going to show you how bad the problem is in our community.
Right. Right.
I mean, how vast, because like we just heard about Shayna Bell and that, and I think the only reason why it went viral was because of that Twitter status. It went viral on Twitter first,
Mm-hmm,
and then that's
mm-hmm.
when people started oh man, somebody started the GoFundMe, and she's
Yeah.
raised like 150,000. Because that's the other thing about the story. They were also unhoused. She was working, paying to live in a motel.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I guess I can't say enough that we're living in an emergency. And people who were already at the margins, clearly they are even in a heightened state of an emergency where they need help and relief now.
Yes.
The problem is that I mentioned earlier, GoFundMe is amazing. I'm not like poo-pooing on GoFundMe, but how many millions of people you think we're going to GoFundMe out of this?
Right. But
that's why I say we have a responsibility to hold our government accountable.
Especially why everybody want to talk about how Black Lives Matter now. If Black Lives really matter, man, it was heavy last year. Everybody said Black Lives Matter, you know. So it's like if they really matter to them, you know, put the reparations where your mouth is, you know. Because
speaking of that, good segue, because they had a hearing on HR 40 last week, which right now HR 40 is just a study, but that study need to be real quick. You feel me? If y'all want to do a study, that needs to wrap up real quick and come up with a number and other things in the different injury areas, because at the end of the day, it's not just about a check, but it is about a check, because clearly we see people need access to resources. The economy has not stopped in this country. Right. You know, under Trump, the economy did not stop. And now under our new president, Biden, the economy is not stopping. So as long as the economy, meaning that stores are open, even if you can't sit down to eat, restaurants are open, grocery stores are open, everything is open. And so those jobs are still happening. So schools being closed and daycares being closed, who gonna keep the kids while the parents work? Right. Right. And let me address this, because this is the other thing that I have been seeing a lot on social media, particularly from some of our friends at the teachers unions, or teachers who are very active in their unions. And I don't know if you've seen this, Tanesha, but one of the things that I've seen, especially early on, was teachers would say on Twitter and on Facebook, "Well, I'm not a babysitter. You know, I'm a professional." Yes. And so I then started thinking, well, damn, let me go look at the outcomes for Black kids in your school district, because I'm trying to see something like, you ain't a babysitter, but damn, it sure don't look like they learning, because is anybody teaching at your school? And this is not a shot. This is not a shot, but I'm just saying that was even anti-poor working class poverty parent. Yep. If the economy is open and they still got jobs to go to, of course you're not a babysitter, but it also means the child doesn't have a safe place to go to because y'all done kept the school building closed. Exactly. You know, and then it's like we've been, you know, a lot of people that know me know that we've been pushing. Like I can't stand the Chicago Teachers Union. Everybody knows that. It ain't no secret. I don't like them. I don't like them. I'll mess with them because they lie. They a Statue of Liberty lie too. And so, you know, we've been fighting here in Chicago because, you know, a lot of the major cities are talking about a return to in-person learning. And again, as someone who's not a parent and someone who's not in the classroom, I don't want to form an opinion about what people should do because I'm not in a position, right? But sure. I feel like that word, that choice should always be present. If parents want to send their kids back to school and if teachers want to go back to classrooms, they should be allowed to do so without the union or a school district dictating that choice or that option. And that's an understand democracy and all that. And, you know, the inner workings of a union, I get it. But I've spoken to a number of my friends, Black teachers who like, you know what, man, first of all, I don't know what the union's talking about because it's always about politics. It ain't never about the parents and the students. It's about their power. They said, we don't know what the union talking about. We in the classrooms, we taking care of our babies, et cetera, et cetera. And parents who want their kids back. Now, parents want to keep their kids at home. That should be an option too. And they should have a strong enough, a quality system or framework that supports that distance learning. But at the end of the day, what we're learning this pandemic is that, and what we've known for a long time is that this one size fits all system is not working. Right. So we need to tailor education and reimagine education so that it works for each and every family, particularly those families that have been marginalized by this racism, by this oppression, by these long-standing systems that do not support Black and brown kids. And so we need to, you know, we need to really have a conversation, that conversation be inclusive of these parents that are struggling, who
aren't looking at teachers as babysitters, but looking at schools as safe havens.
Thank you. The school is a part of the community. Why take that option away? That's why we should have been really creative. Yeah, let's put that slide back up, team, because I want to go back to this idea, and I didn't even know until my team just told me that GoFundMe CEO actually urged Congress to pass more coronavirus relief because he said they weren't meant to be meeting people's basic needs right here. Literally, when I said GoFundMe is not to replace government responsibility. And shout out to the CEO of GoFundMe to like say, woo, like we seeing like people like coming through, like, you know, they helping people, but wow, you know, this organization, our company as a for-profit company is not built to meet the basic needs of millions of Americans.
Right. There y'all go crash GoFundMe. Look at that. Goddamn.
You're so silly, Tanesha. I love you. but in all seriousness though, I did not know that from the GoFundMe CEO. So shout out to him, even though they get a cut. Like, so like even that's going against his bottom line because they get a cut, you know, as you know, I don't know how much the percentage is, but it's always too much for me.
Yeah.
Because I see people GoFundMe for funeral expenses and all those kind of things. So we are in a pretty imperiled position right now because I keep thinking about, and let's hashtag Shayna Bell family. If you're listening to this, make sure you like and share this video, invite other people, you know, to this conversation, because we actually want to hear you all's thoughts and ideas for how we move forward and support parents like Shayna Bell, right? I want to understand what are your thoughts? What are your ideas for how we support mothers, poor and working class mothers all across this country, Black, white, brown, everything in between? How do we do that? We want to hear your thoughts. Share this video with others. Like, let's hashtag her name, say her name. We talk about say her name. Let's say her name, right? This sister hasn't been killed by the police, thank goodness, but she was arrested. In my mind, it was an unjust arrest. Yes, it was so-called child endangerment, but it was child endangerment because number one, she had an impossible choice to make in the first place.
Right.
Because y'all would have been calling her lazy and welfare mama if she didn't go to work. Yep. You understand me? You see how this society do us? So if you damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, if she didn't go to work and she sat around and said, well, I got to stay here with my kids and I want somebody to give me some money to help me, we would have called her all kind of names. Think about that.
Black, so lazy, all that
Black,
stuff.
lazy, you laying up having all these babies and don't want to work. Think about it. Even people in our own community would have said that. But then when she do go to work, she, again, impossible choice. We're in a pandemic, so schools are closed. So the 10-year-old should be in 5th grade. She not in school. The baby, right, 2-year-old didn't have, you know what I'm saying, a daycare to go to or a daycare that this mother could afford working at Pizza Hut.
And then Zakiya talk about the fact again that they were in a hotel room, so they don't even have an address to register for school.
Woo!
That part. The systemic, the barriers that keep Black, brown, poor people out of school. It's bad enough that the schools in the poorest neighborhoods are terrible, but if you don't even have an address, it makes it even more difficult for you to register for school. Right. And so who knows, like, even if the 10-year-old was supposed to be doing distance learning, did the fact that they didn't have a permanent address even affect that? But is the 10-year-old even enrolled at somebody's school? Right. I was searching for that. I didn't find any information, but that's a fact.
I don't think she was enrolled in school because that's the other thing. I saw a report coming out of Alabama, which, you know, is very rural, huge poverty population, has an increased Black population as well. Shout out to Alabama. That's where I grew up, down in Selma, Alabama. Shout out to all my Alabama listeners if y'all listening. But I saw that their Department of Education released, this was maybe 2 or 3 months ago, but like 36,000 students have just went missing. They're not virtual learning. They're not in school. We don't know where they at. And to me, when I thought about Shayna Bell, I said, that's it. They're latchkey kids. They're
Yep.
taking care of siblings. How they supposed to do virtual learning? And that's what make me so angry. And I'm gonna try to like be real professional right now. But I was angry when the LA Teachers Union and School District announced they were just gonna go virtual. First, number one, y'all in California, y'all could have had school outside if you needed to.
That
Number
part.
one,
That part.
all year.
That part.
You know what I'm saying? They're just people just abdicated their responsibility to the vast majority of the people that they serving in the damn school district to begin with. You didn't even get input from parents. You didn't even ask poor and working class parents what will work for you. How can we best serve you?
Because they never do. They never do. And when you talk about Zakiya, I keep shouting out Jason because Jason's working with young people in Atlanta, specifically our sister Aisha, who was on our TDRS a couple of weeks ago. Now we have young people that have to work because they have to support their parents, they support their families, and try to go to school. And as adults, if we know how much pressure it is on us to work,
Right.
now we're putting that pressure on 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. At some point, they might be like, man, it's too much. I got to drop out of school. So that's where those missing kids go. They go to work.
Yeah.
They're now essential
My
workers.
guest last week pointed that out. My guest last
Yep.
week pointed that out. He said, he had to let one of the principals know, like where he lived in his school district, like, hey, are y'all like noticing that a lot of the teenagers, like who eligible to work, like that's supposed to be on virtual learning, are they coming to school? Because
Right.
he said, I'm seeing a lot of them working in my neighborhood. They going to
Right.
work because their
Right.
mothers then got laid off. Now they got to help pay the bills.
Yep.
We are living literally in an emergency. And I'm frustrated because when I think about what policymakers are talking about, a lot of them talking a good game, but I'm not seeing like where the money is meeting your mouth at. You know what I'm saying? Like we hearing a lot of this, but where's the action?
But ain't that always the case? Ain't that always the case? I was thinking last night, I think I was watching something, maybe talking to somebody. I don't remember. My short-term memory is pretty trash. But you know how we talk about, we throw around the words progressive and equity and diversity and inclusion, and all that shit sounds like passive racism to me. It's like,
lean into that more. Talk about that. What you mean?
because we have all of these. We're such a progressive country, even though we're still very conservative. We're progressive now. We're liberal, and diversity, equity, and inclusion are prioritized. But we're not seeing the work. We're not seeing the output. We're not even seeing the input. And so it's like they talk a good game to really, again, mask the systemic racism that we're living in and the oppression. And so it's very passive, like I said, like they, it's all these, well, we need these policies and we need to fund these families and all these things. And it's just like, when we push on that as activists, then we steady get the runaround. It's passive. So it's passive racism to me. That progressiveness and that diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's uplifting the poor and all this stuff. It doesn't mean anything because y'all not doing it. So miss us with that. And right. So it's that same old racism. It just looks like y'all keep putting, cute little outfits on it and shit and trying to fool us and stuff, put a little Borat in his head and trying to call it, equity and equality. And that's not true. That's that same little racist white baby. So yeah. I'm over it, and that's another reason why I'm just like you said, it's a both and situation. Like we definitely got to hold them accountable, but we can no longer wait on this government, on this country to do what they're supposed to do in our communities. It's up to us. Because if not, especially with the pandemic, it's going to be even our communities going to be in worse condition.
Right.
So we cannot.
And I just want to say shout out to us because like for people, just so we are doing the work here at Brightbeam, right? Like we are literally centered in this idea of child justice. Like we know that children are connected to families, are connected to mamas and daddies, are connected to extended family, grandmas, aunties, and that's especially true in families of color. We have those lists. Sometimes we live in what's called 2-generation households. The grandma's living with us. So we know that sometimes, when we say child justice, just so people know, we see it as a truism that we know children cannot vote, number one, right? So therefore, we know that since they can't vote and they don't have power, we tend to see that the policies that might best support their development get lost among other policy priorities. We see that all the time. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to war, or when it comes to funding this and funding that, children and the best practices for what children need and their basic needs get left by the wayside. So we're proud at Brightbeam to be demanding a brighter future for every child, and to make sure that we're centering them, particularly, as children of color, children at the margins. We're centering them in our work. So we ain't just talking about it, we are about it. You know what I'm saying? And the activists that we have working in the 4 cities that we have a focus in DC, the Twin Cities, Chicago, and the Oakland Bay Area, we are about it, so we're doing our part. We need everybody to make sure, that they're, number one, supporting the work that's already happening in communities. But again, if there's gaps in that work, then we need to be figuring out ways that we can have rebuild those benevolent societies that was built after our people were freed from chattel slavery. And I hate to keep bringing that up, but that's where we are.
Seriously. And not even free from chattel slavery, because when you talked about earlier the prison system and how much money is dumped in that's chattel slavery right there. When you talk about war, as a priority, who said we got money for wars but can't feed the poor? That's
a lot of people. I know Fred Hampton was one of the people that said that. A lot of people in the Black Panther Party often call that out. The Black radical tradition has always tried to hold this state, this country accountable for not just what they did to the people who are American citizens, but even what we did to people abroad. When you think about Martin Luther King, people love to stop at the "I Have a Dream" speech, but nobody talks about his anti-war, anti-Vietnam War speech that he delivered at Riverside Church in New York City, literally 1 year to the day he was assassinated. 1 year to the day prior.
Yes.
That he was assassinated. So Black people and other people of color, shout out to the Young Lords, who was a Latino group who spun off, got learned from the Black Panthers, and they wanted to organize the American Indian movement. Shout out to, Leonard Peltier, who, as we know, is a political prisoner. We still have political prisoners in this country, literally political prisoners who fought for justice. Who fought for this country to be responsible, and we still here talking about it because they were locked up.
We had a conversation yesterday, and we were talking about how the CIA infiltrated our communities and destroyed our
FBI,
drugs, CIA and FBI. And I was watching this documentary last night when you talk about political prisoners. They were saying how Tupac's father is a political prisoner, and how
Tupac, his mother, Afeni Shakur, was a part of the New York 21.
And how Tupac was working. So his cover was a rapper, but he was working to bridge the divide between gangs so we can recreate that unity in our communities and fight. So it was. I mean, I don't want to get off track, but it was a whole little thing, and that's why
it's connected.
Tupac, so it's all that stuff, and it's just amazing. And I think that goes back to, because when we're talking about supporting our communities and not relying on the government to do that, that goes for education too. Because you said how they'll teach us in school that Martin had a dream, but they didn't. I wrote last week. I didn't learn about Fred Hampton. You don't. It's a lot of stuff.
From Chicago. You live in Chicago.
Exactly.
And didn't learn about Fred Hampton.
Exactly. In Chicago public schools, like, how could you not tell us about Fred Hampton? That's crazy. And so when we think about the education that our kids are missing out on, like, that's our responsibility too.
That's what Jason just pointed out. The curriculum. Yep.
We can no longer trust this system to educate our kids, particularly with our history, not McGraw-Hill, not this system, not nobody. Because if our kids don't know where they came from, they won't know where they're going. And that's what that's the problem that we have now. And so they need to know more than Martin had a dream, and that Harriet freed some slaves. And so it's that total system. Like when we talk about an ecosystem, the whole child, we're talking about education, we're talking about economics, we're talking about social emotional development, we're talking about all that. All of that stuff is within our power, and all of that stuff needs to be owned by us right now. Right now.
I couldn't agree more. Shout out to the chat is lit today.
Look,
love Wednesday.
Hey,
Yeah, man. The chat is lit today. Shout out to
okay.
everybody that's listening. Thank you so much for being with us today. Again, we welcome your comments. We welcome your thoughts in terms of, what are you feeling listening to this conversation with Tanesha and I? What questions do you have for us, right? I shouted out our organization, Brightbeam. We doing the work. We're centering children, especially children and families at the margins. We're doing that work. But what else do you all think that we can be doing? Number one, to have that parallel approach that Tanesha and I talked about, right? So number one, yes, we have to hold the government accountable. Black people showed up to vote, as we do always, in record numbers, and we always try to pick the lesser of the two evils. Shout out to Black people, right? Like, shout out to people of color who
Yes.
literally went to the polls this last year, and we made some more impossible choices, right? We made some more impossible choices, but we tried to make the best choice possible to just lighten the load a little bit for the people in our families, right? The people that we love and care about, for our own communities. What
We
else
make a
can we
way.
be doing?
We
What
make a way
else can
all the
we be doing?
time.
I just want to just shout out the audience. Drop some comments, drop some ideas in the comments. Let us know what you all are thinking, because we're doing what we can, but we would love to hear about our other ideas that you all think. Go ahead, Tanesha. You were trying to say something.
No, I was just saying that's just, evident that Black people always make a way. We especially make a way out of no way, and we constantly carry it. We haven't built this country, we carrying this damn country on our back.
We
And this
are
country drops
literally.
us every damn chance it gets,
Yeah.
and it's just getting old. And I want to hear, like you said, any solutions that, or just questions that they have in the chat. I want to hear from the other Shayness, because I know y'all out there.
That's it. Come forward. If
Yeah.
you are living right now and you feel like you are having to make an impossible choice, reach out to us. You can go to our website, brightbeamnetwork.org. Reach out to us. We will try our best to connect you with somebody in your community, in your city, who may be able to provide support. But we need you all to come out of the shadows. We don't want to see any of our people arrested, right? I hate to say it because I feel like it sounds so cliche, but literally call your local officials, right? Call your state representative. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Find
Yes.
out. I know in Ohio, I know most of the state representatives in the Dayton area. And for people who live, in other cities, the least we could do is try to help you to find out who has the power in your community, also who are the community organizations providing support. Because that's another thing too, Tanisha. It's like half the battle sometimes, like figuring out, okay, where do I go for support, right?
Right.
What time are they offering support? Like making sure that the support organizations in our community are also open at hours and times to actually meet the community's needs.
And that they're actually doing their job. Because I ain't trying to shade no churches, but similar to churches, we got a lot of nonprofit organizations out here that's just collecting checks and ain't doing nothing.
Well,
That frustrates the hell out of me. If you ain't about this life, go somewhere else. Like, seriously. Like, I put on some channel last night, like, it's a lot of frauds in Chicago. I'm sick of y'all. Get out the way. And those are the people. My sister Natasha Dunn, also one of our activists, pointed out a couple of months ago when the union was, I think they threatened to strike, or they strike. I don't know, they threatened so damn much. My memory is just hazy at this point. But she also pointed out the fact that, again, there are a lot of Black leaders and organizations within our communities, and we're not getting funded. But you have these organizations that have been around for a long time, and they're familiar. Yeah, the gatekeepers. We have these gatekeepers that get all the bags, and they ain't doing nothing.
Yep.
So that's another issue. Is like, we need the.
That's why I believe in giving money to people directly. Miss me with all these gatekeepers. How do we get money to the people directly who need it?
Exactly.
How do we get resources? If it's not money, how do we get the resources and tools that families need directly?
Yep.
How do we get past the gatekeeping mechanism? Because you're absolutely right. It's not just Chicago. I mean, I could blast some people right now in Dayton, Ohio, but I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Because I see it all the time. It's not just Chicago. It's the model itself. Like you said, there's certain, like you already know, when some money coming into a city, there's usually like 3 or 4 organizations who gonna get it.
Yep. And
I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of times They be white liberal led organizations. It ain't even black led organizations that's
Right.
getting the money
Right.
from jump.
And then you got these white people, you know, in Chicago, they live on the north side. They mean to do well, but you know, it's like at the end of the day, y'all not entrenched in the struggle. Y'all didn't
Right.
grow up on the south side and the west side of Chicago. Y'all don't really know where the money needs to be allocated and how.
Right.
You know, so and y'all not even willing to partner or bring
Right.
somebody to the table that can actually do that. That's not only with nonprofit organizations, but that's with city leadership. That's why,
Right.
you know, and I'm a again action item, boom. I'm a shout out every time. We pushing on Lori Lightfoot to develop an independent equity commission that addresses issues in the Black community because you haven't done well. You haven't.
Yeah, that sister.
You
I got some
haven't.
questions for her. Look, I don't
You're
even
the
live in
only one.
Chicago, and I'm like, oh, so you took the coronavirus funds and gave it to the police?
Exactly.
What?
Exactly. And you know, she already had some police ties and stuff before she even became mayor, but she's always been pro police. And with the relationship between the police in Chicago and just the police in the Black community, period, and the struggles that
They're an
we
occupying force. They ain't protecting us.
and you gave them money that we need, Lori.
That
And so
people
that's
need
why.
to stay alive. That people need to pay their rent. That people need
Yes.
to feed their family. She
Yes.
gave it to the police.
And then put out this plan talking about she want Black people to come back to Chicago. You haven't even addressed the damn reasons why we left. We still got our schools are struggling. Crime is terrible. You can't afford to damn live here. You want people to come back from Texas and Atlanta and wherever the hell, North Carolina, wherever the hell they don't went back, come back here, and you haven't fixed the reasons why they left, and you not even talking about supporting those of us that are still here. Lori gone. I ain't got time.
And see, this is a good point that you're making, because when I talked about this earlier at the top of the show, when we talk about Black girl magic, usually we think of Lori Lightfoot. Usually we think of Keisha. Jason going off in the comments. Usually we think of Keisha Lance Bottoms. I remember when she first got elected, everybody was like, hey, we got a mayor named Keisha. But when you think about, okay, so what about the Keishas in the hood though?
Yep.
You feel me though? So when we talk about Black girl magic, are we talking about a particular class of Black women? Because that's what it is. We're not talking about the Shayna Bells. When we say Black girl magic, how's it Black girl magic that we left this Black woman to make an impossible decision and she didn't have any support? You understand me?
Yes. Because we all shine differently, you know. And I think that if your shine doesn't qualify as I guess popular or trendy or whatever, you know, that your shine doesn't count, and that's not Black girl magic. And you know, it's not. I'm not trying to diminish any Black woman, you know.
Me
but at the end of the day, we gonna hold y'all accountable.
Yeah, not trying to diminish, but at the same time, we can't be uplifting certain Black women at the expense of others.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
And those Black women cannot forget about the Black women that, you know, stood alongside them, the Black women that they interacted with, the Black women that voted for them. You cannot. We all got to shine.
Shayna Bells of the world, I can guarantee you voted 9 times out of 10 for likely a Democratic politician. You know, and I'm trying not to get too political, but I can't help but to remember when President, you know, Joe Biden, you know, made his acceptance speech. He said the Black community had my back and I'm gonna have yours. We waiting,
especially Joe. Hey, Joe. Joe.
Somebody send this to Joe Biden. Listen to Tanesha.
You know what? And you know, because I try to stay on track, Zakiya, but some of the stuff
and
I gotta tell Joe, people mad at you because you talking about you need congressional action to do this to
the student loan.
Joe, we need that shit now, Joe. You know what? Because honestly, this student loan debt is contributing to poverty in Black communities. I'm sitting here myself with over $100,000 in student loan debt because y'all dirty ass told me to go to college because that's gonna take me to the American dream. And I still struggle. And I struggle primarily because I'm Black, but I still struggle. And so y'all told a lot of Black kids who sitting in this failing ass system, the only way for them to succeed is for them to go to college. So y'all didn't prepare them to go to college. Then y'all sent them to college without the financial knowledge of the debt or the understanding of the debt that they were about to take on. That's go keep them impoverished in our communities. Joe, clear them checks or give me a new social security number. One of them got to work. Some I'm not.
We gotta do something. Like we serious, man. You know, and this I feel like this has been a good conversation. we're going to continue to have this conversation. In fact, I'm in the middle of writing another piece right now where, and it is going to be centered on our sister Shayna Bell and other Black women like her. And it's going to be more of a broader op-ed that I'm trying to get placed, where I'm going to be talking about how can we create a new social safety net, because the social safety net of the past, unfortunately, has been broken down, right? And I hate to bring it up, but I have to. I would be remiss not to. And I remember it was people like Marion Wright Elderman at Children's Defense Fund. It was a lot of people calling out Bill Clinton back in the 90s. We were both still kids, but it was a lot of people back in the 90s calling out Bill Clinton. Do not do this welfare reform bill. You are going to sentence single working class women mainly, right? Some men too. So I don't want to erase the men, but seriously, mostly women are going to catch the brunt. Women and children are going to catch the brunt of this so-called welfare reform bill. You understand what I'm saying? And now look at us, what, damn near 20, 30 years later, 2021, and now we out here arresting women like Shayna Bell, because we did a welfare reform that was a part of a social safety net where women were able to get access to food stamps and even a check. You used to be able to get a check. Now, in order to even get access to those things, you have to be connected to some kind of work program. Shayna was working, but then where's the child care? Because child care is like $1,500 a month for a child that's 2 years old,
right,
or more.
Yep.
Or more. How's she supposed to pay a rent, pay for transportation? Because she in Ohio. Let's just be honest. There is no public transit. If you live in New York City and you used to the subway or Chicago and stuff, it ain't like that in Ohio. Matter of fact, she lived in Liberty Township, which meant she wasn't even close to a city. So she had to have a car. You understand what I'm saying?
Working at Domino's.
Working at Domino's.
So
don't give families, because that was a problem with the welfare reform bill back in the day when Marion Wright Elderman and other people was calling Bill Clinton out, asking him not to do that and to come up with a better way. Again, here we are, 2021. Now we criminalize the parents.
Yep.
Instead of helping them. Oh, the only public housing program America willing to pay for is jail and prison.
Yep.
What does that say?
Ooh.
We willing to lock up Black and brown bodies, but we don't want to give them a leg up, right? She's only 25 years old. I'm sure she wants to go to college. I'm sure she has hopes and dreams, right? Why doesn't she have access to a free college degree? Again, a leg up. So miss me if you on here listening like they always want a handout. Number one, we built the country. Our ancestors built the country. So it's not a handout. It's what we're owed, number one. Number two, we should be a country that's doing that anyway. Canada, since the pandemic, has been providing their citizens $2,000 a month.
Every month.
And their GDP is a fraction of what the United States GDP is. A fraction. GDP is gross domestic product, meaning that the Americas is in the trillions. Remember, we're the richest nation in the world. And we don't have social safety nets for our people. Tanesha, what's your last thought? We're going to offer some last thoughts. We almost at our hour and everything. First of all, this has been fun. Yeah. The chat has been all the way live. Shout out to Jason. He's been all the way live. You know what I'm saying? But what's your final word, final thoughts as we wrap up for today?
Y'all, I am, I ain't gonna drag on. I just, Black people, it's just time for us to do it for ourselves. That's all I got, honestly. They keep telling us and showing us time and time again that they're not here for us. Even though, again, we built this country, we've carried this country for generations. Right. And so the change that we want to see is in us. I'm calling on everybody that's in this thread that's watching this show to be activated in urgency.
Be activated.
Activated in urgency and in authenticity and in our communities, because we need it. So y'all, we got to do it for ourselves. That's all I got. That's all I got.
And that's good, Tanesha. Yeah, that's good. And as you know, this is building power. That's what we have to do. That's the point of these conversations weekly, is to provide these kind of conversations, these kind of, hopefully we're providing some access to some tools and strategies. If you watch week to week, I always try to have on guests who have some tools and strategies, particularly in education, that can help parents, help families who are poor and working class during this time, right? We have to, like Tanesha said, do it for ourselves, but at the same time, we have to build the power also to do that parallel plan that we talked about at the beginning. We have to have a parallel strategy where, yes, we're going to provide the support for our people, provide as much as we can, but also recognize that there's going to be gaps because we don't have a wealth transfer because our ancestors were the daggone commodity. Our ancestors, Tanesha and I both, our ancestors were the commodity, right? They were enslaved, providing free labor for this country to become the economic front leader, whatever you want to say, of the entire world. So we have to be very clear.
For our kids to be too.
Absolutely.
The plan is for our kids to be too.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I just had to say that.
No, that's good. That's good. So continue to rock with us every week. We're here again every Wednesday at noon. Make sure you like Citizen Ed. Make sure you like and share this video in your networks. Again, we go back and look at the comments. Make sure you continue to give us ideas and strategies that you would like to see implemented in your own community. And again, if you are a mom that is like Shayna Bell, let us know. Reach out to our website. You can make a comment here. We'll try our best to connect you with some support in your community and in your neighborhood. And with that, thank you all so much for joining us today. It was amazing to be here with my sister and comrade and colleague, Tanesha Peeples. We'll see you all next week. Thanks, everybody. Take care.